I know that you primarily here because you know there's pizza coming. Yeah. Rob, you know, I mean, you gotta bribe people. Yeah. So I understand it's 12:10 or so. Is that what it was?
It's 12:04 right now. It should be here in a few minutes.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and take a little break. So what I thought I'd do is tell you a little bit about how I got here, what we've been doing, and also share with you what you can do. But as you guys know, especially the people that have been my colleagues for a number of years, I've been involved in APA and, for that matter, other organizational leadership for a bunch of years. And I actually thought about getting involved at this level for a while, but unfortunately, I got busy with other things, namely raising kids and the usual demands of life. And as time went on, I had become very, very active in the healthcare arena. I'm involved with the AMA CPT panel, which, as some of you know, is what decides what healthcare is done in the U.S. and, in fact, how much it gets paid for each of the procedures. And I realized that the American Psychological Association was, in my view, had put its head in the sand. It had focused itself on certain things, for example, prescription privileges being one of them, and so forth, so on. It was like they were worried about the oarlock, but in reality there were holes in the boat. The boat was sinking. It was like you're missing the boat. It's a very expensive organization to be part of, and it seems unresponsive to a lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And I've voiced some concerns and maybe disappointment as to how the leadership was going. And unbeknownst to me, a well-known neuropsychologist, actually probably the first person to write a book in neuropsychology in English, Gerald Goldstein from Pittsburgh, put out that I was running for APA president. It's like, well, I was thinking about it, but not really. So I was figured, like, what the heck? So what I did is October 31st last year, which is, of course, Halloween, I actually dressed up for one of my classes as, quote, a surfer dude. And I took a picture of myself, and I posted several places that I was running for APA president. And people thought it was a good joke, and they kind of, like, way to go, or we lost your mind. But in reality, that was my formal announcement that I was running for APA president. I figured, might as well get serious about all this. So what's happened is that this is how it works. Essentially, anybody can run for president of APA. And specifically, what occurs is that you have to get nominated. And this year, 7 people were nominated, and they get anywhere from a few votes to quite a few votes. So the lowest vote getter was, I believe, Todd Finnerty, who does disability evaluations out of Ohio, and I think he got somewhere like 100 votes, is that what it was? And then I got the highest number with something like 654 votes. The next candidate was Susan McDaniels from University of Rochester School of Medicine with about 500 votes. So off to the races we go. And what I thought I'd tell you is what is it that we have done during this year. And in fact, I'll even end with, as we go through this, with this weekend as an example of the kinds of stuff that we've been doing. So there are a lot of people that have been involved with this. I wish I could tell you that it's entirely my doing, but it isn't. I should tell you that there's a really large group of people, and see, I don't even know where they're at. We actually should put it on here. But anyway, there's a group of 6 people that are on the cabinet, mostly females, some males, that represent each of the directorates of APA. One is a diversity person from Stanford University. Another one, for example, Dr. Goldstein from University of Pittsburgh, who has been in science all along. One of the presidents of ABAP, and so forth, so on. So that we've got representation of folks. Then in addition to that, there is an advisory group of about 3 dozen individuals. We've got some early career psychologists, some folks of diversity, intellectual, geographic and related diversity, all kinds of folks that have been interested and supportive of this. And then what we call the state leaders, people that have really strong ties to a particular state, like the state of North Carolina is represented by Charlie Cooper, who is the head of political affairs for the North Carolina Psychological Association and runs a large private practice in Chapel Hill. You know, his if you will, his scope is really North Carolina, so that's what he does, whereas the folks in the second level, the so-called council, are neuropsychologists, or for example, Michael Wertheimer, who wrote the book that I use in History of Psychology, whose father was the founder of Gestalt psychology, is one of those kind of people. So we have academics, we have clinicians, we have some young whippersnappers, some older folks, and for what it's worth, interestingly, I actually have some of my, quote, traditional enemies, I've had some challenges with. I included them in the process. I figured that it's better to have people that don't like me close to me rather than away from me. So it's a really unusual mishmash. One thing that's also very unusual is we have a group of about 6 students. 2 of them are in the audience, actually several. We have folks from as far away from Palestine, Russia, as well as several from the U.S. And we call them the Dream Team, and the idea was that the older folks would push the ideas down, the younger folks would push the ideas up, and as you might imagine, they were much more into social media than I was. So that's how we got started. So maybe it's a good time to take a short break. Let's get some food, especially the students. Marley, I see Marley going right for it.
Right.
Go Marley. I know, yeah, good. Or maybe alternatively, we can take the pizza to them. Maybe that's an idea. Okay. Well, we'll serve you for a vote, Rob. This is how desperate we are. Okay.
There's 2 cheeses.
The platform, and we've had some really, the platform is fairly long, and you see that we have several sections: healthcare, psychology of science, diversity in psychology, and training in psychology. This is when I won a couple of years ago what was it? The APA Distinguished Practice Award, and those are my 2 boys. And what we have in each of these cases, all the different things that we've been active. One of the things that's been really, really, really tough is the amount of information that's been requested from me. So for example, I was asked on several occasions to write things. So here's my official bio sketch and statement. In addition to that, we have a series of questions that I was asked over time. And just to give you an idea, I was asked my comments about different areas, including development and aging, rehab psychology, so forth, so on. The different caucuses of the council representative asked me for information as well. And also other groups like the American Psychological Association Practice Organization, and so forth, so on. This is an interesting one because you can read it for yourself, but the official announcement for running for APA actually is presented at the council representatives of APA. And the 7 that got votes, the one that got the top 5 votes are the ones that are actually running. And the other 4 individuals had prepared speeches on iPads. And they got up there and they started reading, you know, that they're really good people, and as they are actually, and that they should win the election because of their long history in APA leadership. And I got up there and I basically said I'm sick and tired of being a second-class citizen. And I basically talked about coming to the U.S. and not being able to learn English right away and the difficulties associated with that. And then now I'm a psychologist, I realized that in everything that we do, we're thought of as second class. In science, we're thought of as soft science. In healthcare, we're not thought of as real doctors. So it's like we're like in no man's land. It's like I'm tired of this. And I'm actually very tired of the long history of APA has of doing a great job of putting the wagons together and shooting the arrows inside the wagons. So it seems like ridiculous. When the world's falling apart, why are we concerned? It was a surprising speech. I did not use notes. I thought about it. It was sort of came off. I wrote most of it, and some of it came off the top of my head. But it was very well received and very, very surprising to many individuals. We actually have brochures for each section of the APA, and you have, I think, the clinical one, and this is the case. And what you see is that there are some commonalities to the brochures. However, it also has very specific information. So, for example, this is science. I think I talked about the things that I've done or my relationship with Roger Sperry. So I founded the Fulbright Society in North Carolina. I've edited a few journals and so forth, so on. So I actually try to make each brochure different. So when I would go to a clinical conference, I took clinical brochures. And when I went to an academic conference, I took academic brochures. And just to go the extra mile, a couple of my students were kind enough to translate some of these into Spanish. So we have them in English and we have them in Spanish. So again, make sure that that's the case. Just to give you an idea of the experience, these are the things that we have in each of the categories. This is an interesting one, okay? These are what people have written. In some cases, my children. Other cases, folks that you would know. For example, Miss Sperry wrote, "If Roger was alive, he'd vote for Tony." But one thing that's really very different is we have two societies that represent all of psychology in their respective countries. The Russian Federation of Psychology, largely because of Zara, as the APA of Russia endorsed me, and in addition to that, the APA of Spain has endorsed me. So this is the first time that we think of any large groups. But we got folks from like the Cape Fear Psychological Association to and National Academy of Neuropsychology and everything in between. I think there are 2 international associations, about 20 or so national associations, and it's been pretty significant in terms of things. One thing that was very different that we did is instead of just running for president, what we decided to do is we sent out surveys earlier this year to find out what people were interested in. So we did a series of surveys, and you can see some are relatively small ends, and some, as you go a little later on, are fairly significant. So let me just tell you, this is interesting. This went out to about 6,000 individuals, and integrative healthcare is the largest one. Interestingly, interrogation and IRBs, as you can see, are very low. And again, you can see up here the kinds of things that people are interested in. Healthcare reform is a big one. The role of psychology in HIV is not as big. Advocacy for women's issues also turns out to be not so big. Federal research is a big issue for science and education. So this is actually the kind of thing that we were using, or I was using, as a way to establish a platform, which of course was on here. Now, the other thing that I think it would be interesting for you to see is the following. Okay, so I'll see if I can get back to it, but we have about 4 pages of platform, and we have about 100 pages of strategy. And I'll share with you what that strategy, but that's going to require something else. But as some of you know, one of my children lives out in California. He goes to school at Stanford. His wife works at Google. So she'd been telling me a few things, and one of their friends had started a small company called MailChimp. So we signed on with MailChimp, and here's, for example, there's my daughter calling. Okay, so let's see. So we sent this one, just to pick one, to 6,000 individuals, 6,300. And here's what was sent to them. And one thing that was really unusual, which was put together by John Capps, is that we actually make it super easy for you to vote. All you got to do is press a button and you're good to go. And this is really, really unusual. This is, we now have 6,800 subscribers, and as you can see, that the open rate is 20%, which is not necessarily bad. We've been getting on average 26. The industry average is 21. We can tell you who opened it up. So let's see who opened it up. Here's the number, and we could actually change it to the number. Look, Connie Duncan opened it up 39 times. Now, Connie Duncan is the president, past president of the Society for Psychophysiological Research. I've known Connie forever. She's married to a longtime buddy of mine, Al Mirsky, who's head of neuropsychology at NIH. So she has opened up 39 times and go from there. Actually, Simone has opened up 20 times. So
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Actually, I can tell you, and I won't say who it is, that one of the faculty here unsubscribed from the listserv on the first day we sent out. So I know there's one person among us who's not super enthusiastic about the campaign. We know that the average person opens up the emails approximately 3 minutes, and we know how many times you click. As a matter of fact, we then have done analytics to try and figure out who's positively clicking on the things that we want, and we then send them subsequent emails as well. And let's see if we have, yeah, so we know who's out there. Let me tell you a funny story that, we know when you open it up. See, people open up right away. It usually, an email is pretty much dead within 24 hours. And we even know what countries opened this up. So 1,700 people opened up in, looks like South Africa. 3 opened in South Africa. Let's see how many in Australia. 8. And then we got 1 in Russia. Probably Spain is big. Yeah, 14 for obvious reasons. So we know where people are opening up. And just to give you an idea, we can even do what we call analytics. John and I were working on this a little earlier. We can see the new visitors and returning visitors. Then our page has been viewed 24,000 times. On average, it's 6 pages per time. We can tell you, this is bizarre. We can tell you that Chrome is what most people are using. Mozilla, almost no one. So we have information about folks that are, it's really insane. We can get down to very, very specifics. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to log on to my email. And let me see if I can, let's see, where is the presidential, yeah. There you go. So, this is the part that if you see it and you think about it, you'll say, I knew that Tony was off by a little bit, and you'll come to the conclusion that I'm way off. So this is the platform that we have, which, by the way, you could find this in the website, and you can hyperlink to everything. This is an article that was done in the APA Monitor a year or so ago. So all these things are actually hyperlinks of things that I've been involved with. For those of you around here, you probably don't know that I was on the steering committee to develop the rehab hospital. So little odds and ends, the journal I started, journal that we just signed with Elsevier. I'm an associate editor, so you can get all this kind of stuff right in there. But this is the part that's interesting, okay? So this is the strategy. Now, let me explain to you about the strategy. Lucas is getting his PhD in political economics at Stanford, and one of his professors that's on his committee actually has studied the Obama campaign, and actually I've been to a couple of his colloquia and read some of his papers. Just happened to just coincide with some of my visits. So what I've done is I've taken the strategy that Barack Obama did, especially in the first election, to a lesser degree, his second election. And for example, we have a very, very, very sophisticated approach to all this. So, for example, we have researched the past presidents. We have gone heavy on social media. We've done webinars. I did a series of webinars every month this month. So we do LinkedIn. We obviously use MailChimp. Now this is curious. About 90,000 people can vote for APA president. 17,000 do not have emails. Now, the question is, do they not have emails, or do they want not to share their emails? We don't know that for a fact. You know, we did the best we can. We did a bunch of publishing. We did a short article on CPT, current procedural terminology, and we sent it to all the 50 all the 50 state newsletters, and many of them published it. We did a short article for military psychology on the research that we do at Camp Lejeune. So that's being published in the military newsletter and so forth, so on. So we did a bunch of little things. I shared with you the brochures. One of the things that seems very inappropriate, but I certainly wanted to do it, is I looked at the divisions that I'm a member of, and it was clear that I was not a member of some important divisions that reflect the kind of work that I do. So I went after that. I was not a fellow, for example, of a couple of divisions, like Division of Diversity of 45. I went after that. The Hispanic, or actually Latino Psychological Association, I had been a member and my membership lapsed, so I jumped into it. We have websites, the policy website, the prior practice website. It took forever because I think I have 8 books and about 75 chapters and 100 articles and about 450 presentations. We PDF most of them. Thank you for PDF them. Do you like PDFing articles? Yes. So we now have almost all my publications out there. The UNCW website was cleaned up. And of course, we have the Puente for President. We did the surveys, and I shared with you the group that's been involved. And then we got all kinds of people to support us. Folks that I'm not that engaged, like the National Society for Professional Schools. And the reason for that is my daughter went to a society program in Florida, and other groups that are more honorific, like the National Academies of Practice. One thing that was really interesting, and you may not know, we actually did something really unusual at APA. So thank you for taking some brochures, as you and Len did. But what we did is we rented an old house close to the convention center, and we piled in, how many of you were there?
Like 20.
About 20. Some of my former students decided they wanted to join in the scuffle. So the rule was, if you campaign for half the day, and we'll give you food and lodging, and the rest of the time you can do your own thing. So it was a very interesting experience, largely because the house was full of flies, like very large flies. But they survived it. But we did all kinds of very different things. One of Hannah Lindsay's roommates from NYU came along, and she decided to do, what was it called?
High five.
High five. So we stood on the escalator going up to the convention, and the students held up signs saying, "You are going to be high-fived by blah, blah, blah." And we did that for about a half hour, and people just thought that was a ton of fun. It was interesting. Anyway, the travel, as you'll see later on, there's a bunch of travel that's gone through it. Division of Labor, lots of people. And here are the endorsements of people that have given me endorsements. You can see quite a few. From Northern Public Interest, the Russian Psychological, the Society for Study of Stress in Spanish, the Venezuela Association of Behavioral Cognitive Psychotherapy. You probably don't know this, but I'm on the visiting faculty at UCLA, and I got a bunch of neuropsychologists from the UC system to write a letter, and we actually have a letter that's come out from the UNC system as well, from people outside of our university, to basically say, vote for Tony. And the goal is, I assume that you would hopefully vote for me, but folks, for example, at Fayetteville State may not know that, so the letter's being circulated as we speak to the other campuses. one thing that I did do, which is really different as well, is I called up all the living presidents of APA, and I asked them if they were running again, what would they do? And some were very, very, like Nick Cummings, really super well-known clinician, said, if I was in your shoes, first thing I'd do is I would go get a therapist, because obviously there's something wrong with you if you want to do this with your career. There's something better. Why don't you consider it? So I got that, and then I got 3 of them that are really, really important. Florence, Denmark, up in New York, Barry Anton as well, and probably the most is Pat de Leon. Pat de Leon was the chief of staff for Senator Inouye, and Pat and I talk about once a week, real late at night, and he's given me suggestions or tips. Barry Anton has also been very supportive. He gave me all his campaign material, and lucky for me, Barry is the incoming president of APA. So got some good support from that. These are the divisions that we submitted things to, quite a few. And then I got questions or endorsements from all these divisions, and quite a few. These were all the people asking for my opinion. Now, some of them, you know, I have something to say about this. I have much less to say about child and adolescent. So it was tough in some cases to do that. This was a losing cause. They have never endorsed a male candidate that I could see, but you know, I did my very best. These are the meetings I've been to. Let me just finish telling you about what I did in this particular weekend, just to give you an idea. So when we went to Camp Lejeune on Thursday, gave a talk, really well received. And then on Friday, I met with Miss Berry of Philadelphia, went to New Jersey on Saturday for the New Jersey Psychological Association. Came back to do something similar in Philadelphia on I guess it was Sunday morning. And then I went to the US Air Club at 12 o'clock and did a Skype presentation to another group. So this has been how it's been beyond fast and furious. This is also, you can see the things are unusual. For example, the last hour before this presentation, we called a bunch of people, and some are very, very friendly, and some not so friendly. And here's the really insane appendix. So these are the guidelines for the election, which were studied extremely carefully before we got rolling. We have research on the nominees over the last few years, and here are the numbers. A really nice descriptor. Here are the election results over the last several years. This is interesting. Alan Kasdan has been very, very supportive of this, and he always says, I'm not going to put anything in writing, and when he writes me in Spanish, but he says, you know, go big and go weird. It was basically what he says on a regular basis. This is an interesting one, okay? This is a funny one. Suzanne Bennett Johnson is a health psychologist, now dean at FSU. She was very friendly when she talked to me. She actually talked to me for an hour. At the end of the conversation, she says, I want you to know I'm going to endorse someone else, but I'm very supportive of you because after all, what you think and what I think is not that far apart. It just happens that this other candidate is my longtime friend and so forth and so on. So when we started doing these MailChimp and Google Analytics, we realized that Suzanne Bennett Johnson had opened up the one of our emails. How many times was it? Like 100 times? Yeah, 96 times. So I wrote her, I said, for not supporting me, you sure are interested in my campaign. And she goes, why is that? It's because you opened up my email 96 times. She goes, that's not true. And I said, well, you know, just heads up, I'm tracking this. So she kind of like freaked and like, whoa. So, but we were kind to her. We took her off our list so she doesn't have to open them up that many times. So we actually studied the people that came before us, what was their area of interest, for example, their PhD, what was their campaign issues. And then, for what it's worth, we now studied the people who I'm running against. So we got Jessica McDaniels, who's an administrator. Excuse me, Susan McDaniels, administrator at Rochester School of Medicine. She's an administrator at a community mental health center associated with Harvard. Kurt Geisinger runs the Burroughs mental measurement yearbook stuff out of University of Nebraska. This is kind of weird. I just finished writing a chapter in one of his books, and I did a review for Psych Critiques for one of his books. But he's, of anybody that I would lose to, I'd be most comfortable with him. Todd Finnerty, who's running a single issue campaign, and that is the internship situation is all messed up, and he only campaigns through Twitter, and I am on Twitter, and everything that I tweet, he actually sends away. So these are the people that have been involved at different levels. These are the different states, and the people involved at different levels of the state. And then these are the people that will talk to me on a regular basis and give me their opinion. Joe Matarazzi has been very supportive. For example, these are people that, because of their positions, will not allow me to use their names in public. Obviously, today is not a good time for you to read these names. But and then these are the speeches that I've given and the statements that I have had to share with APA as well. So and the list, as you can see, goes on. I don't know how many caucuses, like 20 or so, maybe 10, 15 caucuses, about 20 or so divisions. So these are the different things that I've had to put together. And each one, of course, is obviously very, 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 very different. And the summer was spent on writing these many different statements. Some it seemed like a total waste of time because the people had decided who they're going to endorse. So for example, the Division 45, which is ethnic minority, decided not to endorse me. And they endorsed one other candidate, which happens to be an African-American female. One of my guys on the Council of Advisors took it on himself to challenge them as to how come, as a founding member of the division, a fellow of the division, an ethnic minority who does research in that area would not be supported. They said that I was not a member of Division 45, so then we then provided a snapshot, literally photograph of when I became a member of Division 45, and they've been quiet on that issue ever since. So these are the different newsletter articles, and as you can see, the list goes on and on. So what will be done is an unbelievable amount of work using a bunch of people at different levels, very much a grassroots approach, very heavy on electronic media. You know, it's very, in some ways, it's very hard to have a platform because as somebody said correctly, the platform is what I've done for the last 35 years. You know, I can't go around saying I'm really involved in lesbian and gay issues because I haven't. But it'd be stupid for me to say I haven't been involved in teaching of psychology, you know, in the Wordsworth category. We actually tallied up. I've taught 7,500 undergraduates. And to go to the other extreme, that I've had 8 postdocs. So, you know, it's hard to say that you haven't been involved in education when you've been teaching since, as I have, since the age of 25, and I'm now 62. So a lot of water has come into that bridge. So it's very hard to change your platform. Your platform is really the history that you made over the years. And the big thing is trying to get people to understand. Probably the heavy portions of the platform are healthcare based, largely because APA is very much focused on that, but the science is clearly critical, and I've made a number of points publicly and privately that if we do not have a science, we do not have a profession, that they're integrally linked, and this is a message I've said over and over and over again. I'm not sure if people are listening, but that's really been a primary focus. So I think that pretty much gives you an idea of what I've done To be frank with you, I can't believe the amount of work that this is involved. I can't believe the amount of work that people around me have done. The number of people have really kind of taken to the streets to sort of share the message is unbelievable. It's really gratifying. I also have to tell you there's been somewhat disconcerting, for example, some colleagues, in our department even, that I thought I could count on having, I understand. For example, not many of us are here. Also, some folks that I thought were my peers or my friends turned out not to be, and some people that I didn't know were my enemies became my enemies, and it was like, oof. And one thing I've tried to do in the campaign is I've never compared myself against any of the other candidates. People say, what do you think about Susan McDaniels? And my comment's always been, I can tell you what I think of psychology. So my focus has always been that I'm running for psychology, that it's not that I'm running against anybody. So that's been the focus. There's been some heartaches throughout the process. I've gotten sick a couple of times. I couldn't believe it. I ended up in the hospital in New Orleans about 2 weeks ago. Thankfully that was gallbladder stones. But clearly, it's just the amount of effort and time that's gone into this is beyond anything I could ever imagine. But I also hear from people who do this on a regular basis, or really what I call APA politicos. They say they've never seen a campaign that's so different. I'm not an insider, even though I've been involved with APA. I see myself as an outsider, and I think some people within the inner group sort of feel like, what the hell is this scrub coming in trying to become president? He's not like one of us, and that's what I'm saying to people. No, I'm not like one of you. I'm one of the typical persons who represent APA. So we shall see. People ask me on a regular basis, what's the likelihood that I'll win? Which is kind of a strange question. It's like, you have cancer, are you going to make it? So the answer is, I don't know. They give you feedback every Tuesday how many people have voted. And I do know that there are more people that voted in this election than in the past election. But what does that mean? Nobody knows. APA doesn't keep the tally. There's an agency that keeps a tally, so nobody seems to know. I think that what people tell me, and of course, you got to realize that I have a biased sample when I'm getting this feedback. I'm told that I will lose by a little bit or I win by a landslide. So it's very difficult, and I don't have anybody that I think has a good handle on this, because it's tough, Even when I go to NCPA, when I wear my button that says Puente for president, people ask me like, what do you want to be president of? It's like, So, some folks are very disconnected. So I don't really know. It's hard to say. The voting ends on Wednesday, and just to give you an idea, that's my last trip. I go to Nashville, Tennessee to give my last talk on Wednesday. So I am humping it right to the bitter end. So let's take some questions, but I also want to ask the students who've been involved in all this what they think. In fact, here's what I told my students. You really don't have to do this. This is totally desirable. And I always told them the same thing. If it's significant, you gotta build me. If it's small, like suck it up for God and country kind of thing, whatever that is. I feel like they're all, like I told them, I don't think you'll ever be in a situation where you'll ever be involved in a campaign for APA president. So if nothing else, you can see how politics works. So I'm curious to see what they say. Well, let's take your question for starters.
Well, it's incredibly impressive what you guys have done. It's a tremendous amount of work. So I had two questions. Are the other candidates doing anything that even approximates this amount of exhaustive sort of analysis to at least sort of look at a broad view? And the second question was like, what are you gonna do with all this material after you win?
Yeah. Well, I think the answer is no.
They have.
No, I think not.
Right.
In fact, some people have done, let me tell you what one past president came up to, Keenan Withers, who graduated, Keenan is now doing a fellowship at NIH, he helped us as well. Keenan, I don't know if you all know, Keenan is an African-American student, a really great guy. He came up to Keenan and said, if there were no other people on the ballot, I would still not vote for Tony. Poor Keenan goes like, what am I supposed to say? You know? So I think some people are really pissed off at the unusual nature of the election.
And you're not an insider.
And I'm not an insider. I think this has taken people by surprise. And by the way, internally, some people at APA say, this is amazing. This is fun. We're enjoying it. This is exciting. And we're so glad that you're bringing this sort of empirically driven, passionate approach to APA. It's rather than, I deserve to be APA president, it's time for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what, you know, the second part of the empirical, all the data, it's like you have a ton of data. It's
Ton of data.
useful to do something with it.
Well,
an analysis of.
So my goal is, I think there's two approaches. One is, I need to share this.
Right.
This is amazing information. One of them is to give it away, and the other one is to maybe publish it.
Right.
But either way, it's not going to stay here. Like the strategy, now the platform is 4 pages, the strategy is 100. So, you know, and this is stuff that I picked up from Lucas, and sort of imagine Google and imagine Stanford political science with with the passion of an immigrant. Like somebody said to me today, how hard are you running? I said, I'm running so fast that I feel like ICE is coming after me. ICE is the immigration folks. So anyway, real quickly, what kind of observations do you guys have? Angie, let's start with you.
I guess just like the division of labor that we've had as students, just we've all worked together like so well and collaborated, and just seeing how it has developed from the beginning has been really cool.
Yeah, because you guys have been working on it for a long time. Oh, let's raise your hand. Yeah. We have 2 postdocs here. 1 postdoc is working elsewhere. And then we have 4 grad students and a slew of postgraduate students.
I think unusual and like my favorite part was at APA whenever we got to stay at the house. We had students from everywhere.
Yeah,
my sister flew in from California. It was just really interesting to see who Dr. Puente has worked with and how diverse all of the students are. And then we would have some like the older like psychologists come into the house for like dinner, and it was just really interesting to see the dynamic of like 80-year-olds with like 20-year-olds, and just we're all like fighting for the same cause.
Yeah, at night we would invite some of the older members of the group to come and have pizza with the students, and it was fun. So we actually picked up at the airport Margie, who came in from San Diego, and Sarah, who had just flew in from Moscow.
And Keenan, who just came in from Africa.
And Keenan, who just flew in from Africa. So we had 3 continents. You know, like it was. By the way, I did not stay there. I stayed in my son's house, who's doing a postdoc at Hopkins.
Yeah, APA convention is definitely really interesting. Staying in the house at night, it was funny because we would all come back from campaigning and like get really comfortable and lounge, get to know each other, and then like strategize again that night.
Yeah, that's right. We would always get some pizza, whatever, and strategize at night how we're going to do it differently the next day.
And we all got along great. The next day, us 4 girls slept in one bed together, like super cozy. And then the next day we just iron our clothes and get back to it. So it was really fun.
It was like from 6 a.m. to like 12 p.m.
Yeah.
Veronica? What?
Well, it was all this is new for me. I have 1 month here from the APA convention, and it's a crazy and amazing experience.
Well, I think we're running out of time, but any quick comments? John, you've been doing a lot of the analytics.
I was involved heavily with the electronic side of the campaign, and it's just very interesting how much data actually they can pull from you visiting the website. So it kind of made me more scared of the internet.
I'm just wondering, and this is just, maybe you don't know, or maybe you do, but the MailChimp thing, how does that handle forward? So like if we forward it,
Mm-hmm.
We know
Depends
you
on how
forward
you
it.
forward it.
yeah.
It depends on how you forward it. If you forward it using the button that's in the MailChimp, then it actually tells me that you forward it. If you forward it just using like your internet browser, then it just shows as an open.
Oh, okay, so, okay, I was just curious if it was tracking that too.
Yeah, but it does track every time it's open. So.
And Jacob, I actually have to chide him. I know he's got his thesis prospectus defense tomorrow. I had to chide him that he's been working way too much on the campaign. Because on Saturday night I get an email saying, I just discovered this about this or other. It's like, chill, chill. But I'll tell you, since I really haven't gotten to the topic, and that is what does it mean for you and what you can do. I think if we get an APA, well, let me put it to you this way. I cannot determine any psychology professor in the history of the UNC system that's become president of APA. So I'll start with that. So I'll be the first one. We've had some, but they were from Duke. So that's number one. Number two is, man, talking about putting us on the map, this would put us on the map. If we have any concerns about a doctorate program, that we're a second-class citizen, this would be a hard say no to. And what you can do, I think we got certain groups covered. Like if you're a clinician and you're in North Carolina, we got you covered. If you're a neuropsychologist, you've gotten probably a barrage of emails from multiple sources. So for example, an email is going out this afternoon from all the living past presidents of National Academy of Neuropsychology to all the members of National Academy of Neuropsychology. So we've got that. What we don't have are the average academic psychologists, people who are out there just doing what you and I do, teach, do research. So what you can do is send an email. Now, if you say, well, hold on, I'm not a member of APA, it doesn't matter. Send the email anyway and just say, hey folks, hey, one of our colleagues is running for APA president. If you have thought about it, go ahead and do it. You know, who knows? I think this is going to be won or lost at the grassroots. So the election is over on Wednesday, and I think I'll know sometime early next week.
I just wanted to give a quick comment on what Dr. Puente just said. I was really amazed at how the information that we disseminated about the campaign and about Dr. Puente, how it influenced other people and how really great numbers of people get to know him and, you know, hopefully help them make their decision about voting. So it really helps, you know, spreading the information. And that's
Yeah,
really
spreading it in
amazing.
grassroots. That's good. Any questions, comments? Yeah.
If I was to make
Go ahead.
a comment, it would be about, like, you sort of downplayed about all the extra people that are voting. And as I look at history and how votes and presidencies have gone, I would guess, I mean, I'm going to blow a little smoke up your rear, but I would guess that those people that are voting, those extra ones have never voted before, they rarely ever vote. And I think that bodes well for a campaign that is outside of the realm of normal. And I know that you sort of downplayed it, but I can't imagine any other cause. I mean, if you normally come in and vote for the standard issue nominee that runs every single year and never wins, you know, if there's 10,000 more votes or 5,000 more votes, I would have to think that a campaign like this is what stirred those people up, and those people are voting for the first time in a decade.
Well, actually, to give you an idea, we have figured out, partially through Jacob's doing, who has not voted in an APA election, and we've actually called some of those people.
So you knew this and you were sitting on it the whole time.
So you haven't voted, we want you to vote, you know?
Oh, it's a related question, actually. I was curious how many folks haven't voted, eligible voters.
Well, 15,000 will probably vote in this election, maybe 16,000. Interestingly, there seems to be a peak at the beginning, a steady during the day, in between for the 2 months, about 50 to 100 vote, and then a big group at the end. And my estimate, according to what Lucas has told my son, that the typical person who votes at the end hasn't made up their mind yet. Which I believe academics are more in that category, because I'm the closest thing that they have, and maybe I'm not in their area like social psychology.
So you sent out a frame email earlier about what you could send to your colleagues.
Yeah,
We'll
I'll
take
tell you
that
what,
up
I'll
and do
send
that.
you, I'll send the department one.
But this would be the main place to get them to, I imagine, right?
Yeah, well actually, what we'll do is we'll send you a sample email and with a hyperlink,
Right.
so people can just click on and vote right there. I mean, because we think that the average amount of time opening up an email is about 2.5 minutes. Okay, so we got to get people to read and make a decision on relatively little. This is really a cognitive psychology task. Okay, so, well, it's been interesting, it's been fun. You have one more question?
Oh, sorry,
Go
just
ahead.
one quick question. So your life sounds like it's been really busy and full over the last year plus. What's your life going to be like once you become president?
Following my advice.
Yeah, Erica said take a vacation. Well, I'm not going to travel as much as I am. You know, I can't be like in 3 cities in 3 days in the last few days. It's just unsustainable. It's, from a health perspective, mental perspective, it's very difficult to do. I can't continue doing this, number one. Number two, I'm not going to do it. And three, when I get elected president, let's put it in that perspective, I'll have to sit back and figure out what is nailed down that I can't move and what I need to put overboard. Because this is also not sustainable. You have to be up there about 2 or 3 weekends a month, which is not much different than what I'm doing now anyway, but the responsibility would be substantial. I have to rethink everything, from the practice to the university, and determine what I think I can or should do, and then determine what will be done. So,
Presidency start in January?
no, it will be president-elect for 1 year, president in 2016, so I'll have a year to figure it out. Well, thanks, something different.